the summer of 2016, I was in Nice with my girlfriend. Coming from Norway, we were tourists and spent our days on the beach, exploring the city and shopping. On the evening of Bastille Day, July 14th, we were having dinner in a restaurant, sitting outside on a big square right next to a church. We decided to have a late dinner that day, as we had spent most day walking the streets and didn't want to rush anything. We sat there in the warm summer evening and ate pizza, drank beer. It was awesome. The French are a friendly people, and the tourists around us were all having a great time. When we had eaten our pizza, we decided to go down to the beach to watch the fireworks. We were maybe about 150 meters away from the beach, and we just had to walk for 2 minutes or something to get there, so we walked in a slow pace. We were about to enter an alley, which ended on the promenade, when we heard some girls screaming. A second or two later, the mass of people around us, who were about to go down to the beach, started running in the opposite direction. It looked almost like a ring of water spreading out, and people ran in all directions but down to the beach. It was maybe the most chaotic situation I have ever been in. We didn't know anything about what had happened, if anything, but we could clearly see those running from the beach were scared to death. So me and my girlfriend started running as well, upwards, trying to get to high ground far away from the beach. After about 3 minutes of running, we slowed down and were now just walking fast. We started hearing sirens and knew that it was indeed something bad that had happened, and not just a case of mass hysteria. We immediately called home to our families in Norway, saying that something had happened, but that we didn't know what, but that we were safe. The news hadn't reported on it yet, so they didn't know anything. Anyway, we walked back to the hotel in a steady pace. We walked down some narrow alleys, away from the hillside which we had been walking in, and entered the city center. The streets were dead calm. We didn't see anyone. We didn't know what had happened. After a while, we passed some policemen and asked if they knew anything. They said they didn't know too much, but that it had apparently been some sort of terrorist attack. And then they ordered us to keep away from the beach, head home and stay safe. We weren't very far from the hotel in downtown Nice when we entered one of many dark streets. There were cars on each side of the road, parked for the night. Suddenly, right behind us, 2 women, carrying a small child, ran as fast as they could, screamed loudly and hid behind a car. They were the only 3 people we had seen since talking to the policeman, and seeing the terror in their eyes, we were certain that they had seen someone with a gun coming towards them. The first thing me and my girlfriend did was to hide behind the car as well. Remember, we didn't know anything more than that it had been a terrorist attack. We didn't know how many attackers there were, how they had attacked, if they had bombs, guns or whatever. So seeing the 2 women both scared to death, I was sure that there was a terrorist, or maybe more terrorists, in our immediate vicinity. I thought that they probably stood at the end of the street, pointing their guns at the cars we hid behind. I knew that this would be a trap, and that it would just be a matter of time before they would get to us, so I started running over to the other side of the street to get into a side street and to be a little safer there. At this point, I actually thought I was going to die. I just waited for the noise of a machine gun and bullets spreading across the street. Remember, the women we'd just seen were literally scared to death. I don't think I've ever seen a person as scared as they were. So I was sure that they must have seen something. But anyway, when I ran across the street, I was certain that if I had turned my head around, I would see some black-dressed man standing there with a gun. I heard my girlfriend scream my name behind me, but I didn't think too much about that. I wasn't even scared, to tell the truth. I was just extremely angry and filled with hatred. I remember thinking that Europe has brought this upon herself, letting vast numbers of immigrants into our countries. I was angry at the politicians who were either too naive, too scared, or too ideologically blinded to understand the threat of Islamists and Islam. I remember thinking all these things when I ran over that street. And then I thought about France, the land of Charlemagne, and the land of Charles Martel, the hammer, who defeated the Muslims at the Battle of Tours in the 8th century. I thought about what he would have said, the great hero from Tours. Was his sacrifice in vain? Which legacy of France did his successors communicate? Of course, both me and my girlfriend got back to our hotel room safely. There hadn't been more terrorist gunmen. The women we'd seen were probably just hysterical. And thinking back, I'm more scared now than I was when it actually happened. Because I keep thinking about all the things that could have gone wrong. What if we'd been earlier for dinner? What if we'd eaten up our food 5 minutes sooner? Then we would have been on the promenade when the attack happened. It's worse for my girlfriend though. She feels really nervous and scared in crowded places after this. Because she knows that terrorist attacks aren't just something you read about in the news. They can actually happen, and they can happen to all of us. And the main reason for that is our stupid politicians who have opened our borders and let people from a completely different culture and a whole different civilization into Europe. I said that what I felt and thought running across that street was anger towards our politicians. Anger for breaking down Europe, the greatest continent in the world, and reducing it to some kind of help center for people who hate everything we believe in. But I survived. I wonder what those less fortunate thought about. And I think I know. I think they were angry. I think their final thoughts, when lying on the ground, was anger towards the terrorist, but also towards the leaders of Europe. Because in the end, this was indirectly their fault.